"I can't," my fiancé said at the altar, his voice slicing through the chapel's hush, amplified by the microphone. The organ music died, the rustle of 200 guests' silk and suits falling silent. My heart stopped. In my custom French lace gown, the veil my mother had tearfully placed felt like a shroud. The gardenias and peonies in my hands turned sour with decay. Liam, my fiancé, faced me with performative anguish. "I'm so sorry, Amelia," he said, voice cracking theatrically. "I'm in love with Chloe." Gasps erupted. Chloe, my maid of honor, my best friend since college, stood behind me, her dusty rose gown a mockery of her betrayal. The air thickened with the cloying scent of roses. 5 years, dreams of a future, names for our kids. He wanted Arthur after his grandfather. I wanted Julian because it sounded sophisticated. We'd compromised on Theo. Everything shattered in this cliched betrayal. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father half rose, rage in his eyes. Then I saw Robert Henderson, Liam's boss, CEO of Henderson and Stiles Financial, in the third pew, uncomfortable in his morning coat. Rage replaced my numbness, a crystal-clear clarity. I took a deep breath, smiled serenely at the guests, and pried the microphone from Liam's hand. "I release you, Liam," I said, voice steady, echoing to the back. Then I stepped to Robert Henderson, his face a mask of corporate unease. Leaning down, I whispered into the live microphone, "I hope the partnership was worth it, Robert. Because the forensic audit of your Cayman accounts begins on Monday." His face drained to a waxy gray, eyes wide with terror, realizing his empire's end. I handed the microphone to the stunned priest, straightened, and walked down the aisle, head high, the jilted bride now the architect of their ruin. My name is Amelia Reed, and until 15 minutes ago, I was about to become Amelia Thorne. At 30 years old, I was a partner at a boutique corporate intelligence firm, Veritas Solutions. My job was to see the patterns others missed, to find the hidden truths in spreadsheets and digital footprints. It was a fact Liam always introduced with a hint of possessiveness at parties, saying, "My fiancé, Amelia, she's the one who digs up the dirt on billion-dollar deals," as if my success was a fascinating, slightly dangerous accessory to his own. We'd met at a charity gala for the City Symphony. He was a rising star at Henderson and Stiles, charming, ambitious, with a smile that could disarm a boardroom. He'd swept me off my feet with a relentless, focused courtship that should have been my first warning. He was a man who identified what he wanted and formulated a plan to acquire it. I had been his ultimate acquisition. My maid of honor, Chloe, was my closest confidant since college, 28 like me, a bubbly event planner with straight blonde hair, green eyes, and a laugh that could light up a room. We'd met in freshman dorms at UC Berkeley, bonding over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of conquering the world. Lila was the sister I never had, the one who'd held my hair after bad breakups, celebrated my promotions with champagne, and helped plan every detail of this wedding, from the lavender color scheme to the vintage car getaway. Or so I thought. The affair, I would later piece together from drunken text screenshots, Chloe would desperately send me weeks later in a futile attempt to justify her betrayal, had been going on for 8 months. It started as comfort when Liam was stressed about work. Chloe, the struggling artist, perpetually anxious about rent, had been dazzled by his money, his promises of a stable, his glamorous life, his proximity to a world of gallery openings and charity balls that she desperately wanted to belong to. They thought I was too busy with my own high-stakes cases, too trusting, too boringly predictable to notice the late-night texts he'd dismiss as work emergencies, the business trips to Chicago that magically coincided with Chloe's artist retreats to the same city. But I did notice. A good intelligence operative always notices. The pattern was there, a faint but persistent signal in the noise of our lives. The first significant crack appeared 4 months ago, a Tuesday. Liam had left his email open on our shared home computer while he took a shower. I was bringing him a coffee when I saw an email thread with Robert Henderson. The subject was partnership track and discretion. My professional instincts, the ones I usually compartmentalized away from my personal life, prickled with alarm. The language was cold, corporate, and vaguely threatening. It talked about final vetting and ensuring no familial entanglements or external loyalties that could pose a conflict of interest or a security risk. It felt less like a promotion and more like an initiation into a secret society. I remember a cold knot tightening in my stomach. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just the cutthroat nature of high finance, the price of admission to the inner circle. But the seed of doubt was planted. I started paying closer attention. I noticed Liam was more protective of his phone, always placing it face down. He started using a passcode instead of the Face ID when I was in the room. Small things, easily dismissed individually, but together they formed a constellation of suspicion. Then, the hammer blow landed 2 months before the wedding. My firm was hired by a major investment group to do a deep, routine due diligence check on a complex network of shell companies linked to a larger confidential case. It was the kind of intricate, challenging work I lived for. The financial trails were a masterclass in obfuscation, a spiderweb of offshore accounts in the Bahamas and the Cayman Islands. For days, I lived in a world of encrypted transfers and layered corporate veils. As I meticulously untangled them, a familiar name kept appearing in the metadata, buried under layers of encryption but clear as day to my trained eye. Henderson and Stiles. And more specifically, Robert Henderson's personal authorization codes, digitally signed on multi-million-dollar transfers that had no legitimate business purpose. I had stumbled, entirely by accident, upon a massive, ongoing fraud. Robert wasn't just skimming, he was operating a sophisticated scheme, siphoning millions from client accounts and pension funds into his own private coffers. It was a career-ending life-in-prison-level crime. My blood ran cold, my hands trembled over the keyboard. I thought of Liam, working so closely with this man, aspiring to be his partner. Was he involved? Was that what the vetting and discretion were about? Was my fiancé, the man I was about to vow my life to, not just an adulterer, but a criminal? Panic threatened to choke me. I did what I was trained to do in a crisis. I stabilized. I took a deep breath. I said nothing to anyone at my firm, marking the files as a dead end to throw off any casual scrutiny. Then, I secretly copied everything. Every transaction, every authorization code, every encrypted email header. I secured it in a private encrypted cloud drive under a dummy corporate name Liam knew nothing about. I created a dead man switch email programmed to send the entire dossier to the SEC, the FBI, and every major financial news outlet if I didn't log in and reset a timer every 48 hours. It was my insurance policy. A part of me, the woman in love, hoped I was being monstrously paranoid, that I would never, ever have to use it. I convinced myself I was crazy. I loved Liam. I buried the bone-deep dread under a mountain of wedding planning minutia cake tastings, floral arrangements, seating charts. I focused on the beautiful, shimmering future we were supposed to have. I ignored the way he and Chloe sometimes shared a look across a dinner table that lasted a second too long, a look of shared secret knowledge. I dismissed her newfound, uncharacteristic interest in hedge funds and her sudden appearance with a $2,000 Louis Vuitton handbag as trying to fit in with your world, Ames. The morning of the wedding, the dread was a live wire under my skin. I was a bundle of raw nerves, which I attributed to perfectly normal pre-wedding jitters. The hairdresser and makeup artist fussed over me, creating a vision of bridal perfection. When it was time to get into the dress, it was Chloe who helped me, her fingers deftly working the endless line of tiny buttons up the back. Her hands were shaking. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride," she'd said, but her voice was thin, reedy, and her smile was a tight, nervous line that didn't reach her eyes. She couldn't look at me in the mirror. "Are you okay?" I'd asked, my own voice sounding far away. "You seem nervous. Just overwhelmed for you?" She'd lied smoothly, her gaze fixed on the final button. This is such a huge day. Now, standing in the vestibule of the church, listening to the muffled sounds of the gathering guests, the insurance policy in my digital pocket felt less like paranoia and more like a horrifying premonition coming true. The bouquet in my hands felt like it weighed 100 pounds. As the opening notes of the processional swelled and the great wooden doors swung open, I saw Liam waiting for me at the end of the impossibly long aisle. He was smiling, but it was a strained, tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. His gaze kept darting past me, down the line of bridesmaids, to where Chloe stood. I took my father's arm. He squeezed my hand, his grip strong and reassuring. "You look pale, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything okay?" "I'm just ready for this to be over, Dad," I replied, and it was the truest, most chilling thing I'd said all day. The walk back down the aisle, alone, was the longest and shortest journey of my life. The silence was a physical weight, pressing in on me from all sides. I saw the pity, the horror, the unabashed morbid curiosity on every face. But I also saw something else in a few of them, the sharp, calculating eyes of Liam's colleagues and rivals, the other junior partners at Henderson & Stiles who knew Robert Henderson. They had seen his face turn to ash, they had heard my whisper, amplified for all to hear. A different kind of shock was setting in among them, the kind that precedes a market crash. I pushed through the heavy oak doors of the chapel and into the bright, mocking sunlight of the afternoon. The world outside was continuing, as if nothing had happened. Cars honked, people laughed. It was surreal. The limousine driver, who was supposed to whisk us away to a glamorous reception filled with champagne and dancing, stood by the open door, his face a mask of profound confusion and pity. "Just take me home," I said, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "Ma'am, the reception?" "Home," I repeated, the word final. I slid into the cool, dark interior of the limo, the vast expanse of the seat where Liam was supposed to be sitting, feeling like a canyon. As the car pulled away from the curb, the facade finally began to crack. A single hot tear escaped and traced a path through my perfectly applied makeup. I let it fall. It was the only one I would allow myself. I pulled out my phone. It was blowing up. Dozens of missed calls from my mother, my father, my sister. A flurry of texts ranging from, "What the hell happened?" to, "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" I ignored them all. I had work to do. I opened my encrypted drive, my fingers moving with a calm, practiced efficiency. I navigated to the file labeled Project Hades. With a steady hand, I disabled the dead man switch. The insurance policy was now an active weapon. Then, I began composing new emails. I attached the files, the damning financial records, the illicit transfer orders, the encrypted authorizations, all neatly decrypted and annotated with a summary a first-year law student could understand. I wrote a concise, professional, and utterly devastating cover letter. The first email was addressed to the Enforcement Division of the Securities and Exchange Commission. The second to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Division. The third to the most dogged financial reporters at the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times. I filled in the subject lines, "Urgent and confidential. Evidence of systemic fraud at Henderson & Stiles." My thumb hovered over the send button. I took a deep breath. This was the point of no return. I could still walk away. I could delete it all, let them have their sordid little happiness, and try to pick up the pieces of my own life. I thought of Liam's performative sorrow at the altar. I thought of Chloe's trembling hands as she buttoned my gown. I thought of Robert Henderson's smug face at countless dinner parties. And I thought of the partnership Liam had sold his soul for. I selected all 3 emails, and I hit send. A strange, profound silence settled over me. It was done. The limo dropped me off at my apartment. I walked inside, the train of my monstrously expensive gown dragging on the dusty hallway floor. I went straight to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. A woman in a wedding dress. Her makeup still perfect, except for the single, clean track of a tear, her eyes burning with cold fire. I began to methodically remove every trace of the day. I unpinned the veil, dropping it on the counter. I unbuttoned the countless tiny buttons, my fingers steady and sure, and stepped out of the gown, leaving it in a heap on the tile floor like a discarded skin. I looked at it for a long moment, this symbol of a future that was now a lie, then I walked away from it. I changed into soft, worn jeans and an old college sweatshirt. I poured myself a very large, very neat glass of whiskey from Liam's prized bottle of Macallan 25. He was saving it for the day he made partner. I took a long, burning swallow, and I sat down on the sofa, my phone in my hand, and I waited. The calm was unnerving. I had just launched a nuclear weapon, and I felt peaceful. It took 47 minutes. My phone rang, shattering the silence. The screen flashed. Liam. I watched it ring, the vibration of frantic buzz against the glass coffee table. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. He was panicking. Good. Then, a new number flashed on my screen. A number I recognized from the Henderson Stiles corporate directory. Robert Henderson. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered. I said nothing. Amelia? His voice was a strained, panicked rasp, a far cry from the booming baritone he used to command boardrooms. What have you done? Nothing, I said calmly, taking another sip of the expensive whiskey. It tasted like victory. Yet, the emails are drafted and ready to go. All I have to do is hit send. It was a lie, but he didn't need to know the war was already over. Let him think he was still negotiating the surrender. Don't, please. We can talk about this. Whatever you want. Money. A settlement. Name your price. I can make you a very wealthy woman. It's not about money, Robert. My voice was flat, cold. You can't buy your way out of this. Then what? For God's sake, Amelia, my entire life's work. Your life's work is built on theft, I interrupted, my voice like polished steel. And my price is Liam's career. I want you to fire him. Publicly. Today. I want you to put out a press release stating he was terminated for gross misconduct and is under internal investigation for his role in your financial discrepancies. You will make it unequivocally clear that he is radioactive, that he will never work in finance again, anywhere in the world. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his ragged breathing, the sound of a trapped animal. I can't do that. It will raise too many questions. It will lead them right to me. Then I suppose you and Liam can be cellmates, I said, my tone conversational. Enjoy reading about yourself in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow morning. The subject line is quite catchy. Your choice. I hung up. I didn't wait for a reply. I had given him his orders. I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Not with a call, but with a news alert from a prominent financial blog. Breaking. Henderson Stiles fires rising star. Liam Thorne, citing gross ethical breaches and ongoing internal investigation. I opened the article. It was brief, brutal, and perfect. It used phrases like zero tolerance and violation of fiduciary duty. It was a corporate execution, and Robert had wielded the axe himself to save his own skin, just as I knew he would. I smiled. A small, bitter, deeply satisfying smile. I took a screenshot. Then I went back to my email. I found the original, sent messages to the SEC and FBI. I forwarded them again, this time adding the screenshot of the news article about Liam's firing to the thread, with a new note. As you can see, here the rot at Henderson Stiles is already being exposed. This is just the beginning. The fallout was nuclear and spectacular. Robert Henderson was arrested by the FBI at his exclusive country club 2 days later. The perp walk broadcast on every major news network. The scandal dominated the financial news cycles for weeks. The story of the jilted bride who brought down a financial giant became a media sensation, a modern-day myth. Requests for interviews flooded in from every talk show and news program. I gave none. I remained a ghost, which only added to the legend. Liam, of course, was utterly ruined. Not only was he fired, but the very public and specific nature of his termination for ethical breaches in the midst of a massive fraud scandal meant no other firm, no matter how shady, would touch him. He was toxic, a pariah. His name was synonymous with betrayal and failure. He and Chloe tried to spin a narrative of true love conquering all, giving one cringeworthy interview to a low-rent tabloid show, but they were universally despised. The public saw them for what they were: shallow, selfish, and cruel. Their 15 minutes of fame were 15 minutes of infamy. They lasted 6 miserable months in a cramped apartment before she left him, reportedly for a wealthier, older gallery owner who could once again provide the lifestyle she craved. The last I heard, Liam was working a dead-end data entry job and living in a studio apartment on the wrong side of town, a hollowed-out shell of the ambitious man he once was. As for me, the notoriety, handled wisely, became my brand. My firm, Veritas Solutions, surged with high-profile clients eager for the woman who took down Henderson and Stiles. I became the country's top corporate intelligence agent, my fees tripling overnight, turning my public humiliation into unmatched professional triumph. I sold the apartment I shared with Liam and bought a sleek loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and a stunning city view, mine alone. One evening, unpacking the last boxes, I found a framed photo from a Henderson and Stiles retreat. Me, Liam, and Chloe, arms around each other, smiling against a sunset golf course. A snapshot of a lost future. I stared at it, feeling no anger, only a detached curiosity, like studying a relic. In the kitchen, I placed the frame in the stainless steel sink and lit a match. The flame curled the photo, blackening our smiling faces. The glass cracked with a sharp pop. I watched until only ash remained, the acrid smoke lingering. Some things aren't meant to be saved. They're meant to burn, clearing space for something stronger, entirely your own. As the last ember faded, I felt no regret, only the quiet peace of a war decisively won.